All right, welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast with Justin and Brandon. What on earth did we just witness in Brazil? I don't know what happened. We've had like 48 hours to process this now. We usually record on Mondays. It is now a Tuesday. I still don't really understand what happened in Brazil. It was a crazy race on Saturday, then we didn't even have qualifying and a race on Sunday. The most insane race of the year. Have you processed this? I haven't. How are you feeling?
I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to feel. There's so much to talk about, but it was incredible to watch. Waking up early Sunday morning here in the United States to watch qualifying, and then watching the race a little later in the afternoon. It was a lot. It was a lot to consume all on a Sunday, but it was a lot of fun, and I don't know. A lot to process, but I'm glad we get to talk about it.
Yeah, there was a lot that happened in Brazil. We have to talk about the sprint really quick because all of the meet happened on Sunday. After the sprint happened on Saturday, I was like, okay, we can take a good amount of time to talk about this on our podcast. So much happened on Sunday that we're gonna just fly through what happened in the sprint. All right, it was a McLaren 1-2. We kind of expected it. And Oscar Piastri started on pole, and why wouldn't it have been a stressful driver swap? You know, the papaya rules had to come back one more time. McLaren can just never make it simple. And then got a little suspicious with a little VSC, kind of waited for McLaren to do the switch. Nico Hulkenberg was out of his car and walking before they decided to put out the VSC. What do we think about that? Little sprint recap. How you feeling?
Okay, so first of all, driver swap. I think that should have happened on lap two. It didn't. So I don't
In
know.
fairness, that Charles Leclerc was pretty close, so they didn't
He
want to
was.
jeopardize the 1-2
That's
Constructors'
true.
Championship still on with Ferrari.
This is true. This is true. Regardless of, it should have happened earlier in the race. I mean, and Lando's radio message, you know, clearly communicated that he thought that was going to happen earlier in the race, and it didn't. So I don't know, just another botched or kind of awkward thing that, I mean, it's like they talk about it, and then when it comes time to do it, they're like, man, but we don't want to hurt Oscar's feelings, or maybe it'll be awkward when they get back to the garage. It seems like they are afraid to actually execute or tell the drivers what to do. I don't know what happened, but they got it done. So that's good.
They're still
And
facing the growing pains of being up front again for the first time, but
this is true.
I fear for them if they are like even closer of a driver pairing next year. It's gonna get real awkward in McLaren real quick.
Yeah, it's true because, we're dealing with this 3 rounds from the end of the season now, right? But if we're dealing with this in round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's like both those drivers have a shot at the driver's title at that point, right? And now it's hard enough when Oscar, has been mathematically eliminated from the championship to switch things around. I don't know. Anyway, Saturday was a decent day for McLaren. I guess you could say they figured it out in the end. The whole VSC was very strange. I don't know why they waited so late. I don't know, maybe to let McLaren swap. We will probably never know if that is why. I don't know. Maybe Michael Massey was back at the helm. We'll never know. But yeah, I definitely did think that was interesting. Um, you know, Also not very safe because Nico was already out of the car, that kind of thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily. I'm not going on record of saying that the FIA is meddling with this championship. I'll put on like a single piece of tinfoil. I'm not putting the whole hat on for this. I don't think the FIA is trying to make this championship closer for Lando Norris or that they were trying in that moment. But we saw the interesting VSC. We saw a penalty given out to Max, fairly deserved, but then Lando not getting any kind of time penalty on Sunday. We saw some interesting red flag timing in Sunday and qualifying, things that seem to have gone in Lando Norris's favor. I am not saying that the FIA wants to keep it close for Lando Norris, but I wouldn't put it past the FIA to like have the desire and motivation to keep it close. Like not necessarily favoring Lando Norris and wanting him to win, being anti-Max. I mean, that's kind of how it would fall if this was true, but there's at least motivation on their side to want to keep the championship close. That's all I'm saying. Single piece of tinfoil off. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense. If you think about the most recent closest championship, was 2021, and that was a breakout year for Formula One in popularity, in terms of popularity. So it's definitely in their best interest to keep it close, to keep it exciting. The spirit of competition is there. I mean, obviously, with the FIA and the stewards and all that, we are dealing with people, and people are not perfect, So as in any sport, the referees are often, can be wrong, and that's just a part of the sport. Part of competition is sometimes things go your way and sometimes they don't. So there is a human factor there, and I think, well, it's not always the easiest pill to swallow. I think it is an important thing that we keep that, you know, at the forefront of our minds when consuming Formula One and sport in general, is that these people are just people too, trying to do their best, trying to do the jobs that they have been asked to do. And it is a high pressure situation. I've never been an FIA steward or anything like that, or even like a 3-year-old soccer game referee. But I can imagine the pressure is pretty high on those people when they're trying to make these decisions. So
Yeah, I think we might even be giving like too much credit to the FIA to say that they're trying to rig this championship. It very well could just be incompetence and inconsistencies. Like we can just explain it all as they just cannot be consistent in their decisions from weekends to weekends and do a horrible job of stewarding. So we can just write it away to that and say that there's no conspiracy. But that is Saturday and it's nice and neat box. Let's move on to Sunday, starting with my podium pusher moment of the weekend. Got to be Max Verstappen's incredible Sunday drive, P17 to P1. What a drive. Yes, there was some luck. You know, he had two drivers that qualified in front of him not start, had some luck with the safety car to red flag, got to change his tires. But still, 17th to first is insane. First lap of dreams, overtook five drivers on the first lap. That move around the outside of turn three, just beautiful. He is so good in the wet, especially around Brazil. He was like the only driver to be able to make moves. Drove away at the end with like 17 fastest laps straight. Just incredible race from Max Verstappen, showing why he is a deserving world champion.
yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's by far probably the best drive I've ever witnessed from a Formula One driver. I mean, and you can look back at the statistics too. Winning from P17 or further back on the grid has only been done 5 times. So statistically, also one of the best drives in the history of Formula One. If you didn't watch it, you could at least look at the stats and see that. But yeah, he was just way more confident than everybody else. He was making moves. He was, if you look at the 10 fastest laps in the race, the top 9 are Max. So it's just crazy. And that just totally agree with you. That just shows that Max is deserving of the world championship when the difference, if you say weather is the great equalizer, right? Then the driver makes the difference, right? And Max was the difference on Sunday. Absolutely incredible to watch. And, that's why he's going to join the ranks of people like Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher that have 4 more world championships. So
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely incredible. Speaking of world championships, let's jump into our first question. Is this the end of the championship? There's now 62 points between Max and Lando. Before the race started on Sunday, I was like, here we go. Big championship swing incoming. You know, when Max got eliminated from qualifying, he was pretty upset. He knew the task at hand starting from P17, Lando P1. Yeah, don't worry. Lando Norris bottled it before the start even began with the old aborted start mishap, and then bottled it again at the actual start lost P1 to George Russell and was stuck behind him. Who knows how that affected his race if he could have driven off and had the buffer for the pit stop and would have never been behind Max Verstappen. And then just goes off at the first restart, re-loses the position to George, and then goes off again and falls down to P7. McLaren has to do a driver swap for the second time in a weekend, except this time it's for P6. It's a massive point swing in Max Verstappen's favor, a massive momentum swing. Surely, with 3 races left, unless something absolutely extreme happens, this has to be the end of the championship for Lando Norris.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. Lando now has to outscore Max by 3 or more points to keep the championship fight alive in Vegas, which Lando hasn't always been able to do that, even when he has a faster package. One example being the weekend we just watched. Again, weather was involved and all that kind of stuff, but still, I think it's over. I mean, we were looking at potentially having if Max didn't score points on Sunday and Lando won and got the fastest lap, that could be an 18-point gap. He was, I think, down to 44 points after the sprint on Sunday, or on Saturday, excuse me. And then, potentially being an 18-point gap at the end of Sunday if Max didn't score. But now it's a 62-point gap. Yeah, that's crazy. Lando, I mean, it's going to have to be 3 DNFs and 3 Lando wins, essentially.
Pretty much.
Pretty close to it. So the championship is definitely over. Max Verstappen is a deserving world champion, and 4 in a row.
Yeah, well, it would have to be like 3 DNFs and wins because 3 second places would not do it for Lando Norris at this point. That would be 54 points, 57 with the fastest laps. So, yeah,
Literally 3 wins, or
he's gonna need to win out and for Max Verstappen to show up with like an RB6 for the last 3 Grand Prix and see what happens. Brendan, what was your podium pushing moment of the weekend in Brazil?
my moment of the weekend has got to be Sunday morning qualifying. I was super pumped to get up on Sunday morning and have a qualifying session to watch live. And it kind of brought everything that it promised. There was weather involved, which weather always makes qualifying super interesting. The track had been resurfaced, I think like they said a month or so before the race. So not a lot of rubber was laid down. Track was more bumpy. The track progression, with the track rubbering in during sessions kind of all throughout the weekend was a big factor. Lewis Hamilton went out in Q1, so that was kind of crazy. And then you had both Red Bulls out in Q2. Max obviously took the 5 place grid penalty for changing his internal combustion engine, dropped in P17. And then you had Lando starting in P1, and then an incredible performance by the RBs, Yuki and Liam. Started in 3rd and 5th as well. So that was really cool. Yuki's highest ever grid start. Obviously did not finish on the podium, but he ran a decent chunk of the race on Sunday in that 3rd position. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun to watch, and just you never really knew what was going to happen. There was a lot of crashes, which was unfortunate to see. A couple of really big crashes too. But yeah, it was an awesome qualifying session, and that just made me even more excited for the race. And boy, I had no idea what was coming.
Yeah, 5 red flags in that qualifying session, absolutely insane. And then you had drivers that had to start from the pit lane. Alex Albon couldn't even partake in the race after he bended in qualifying, which is like crazy on its own. And that's like the smallest thing that happened this weekend. The fact that a driver had to withdraw from the race before it even began is like nothing for this weekend. That's how insane it
Yep.
was. I'm
Yep.
so glad they repaved this surface to get rid of the bumps because I'm like 98% sure it made the dang track more bumpy. Like the drivers were complaining
They did.
about the ride all weekend, and we showed up on Thursday and they're like, new track surface, it's fixed, it's gonna be awesome. And then it was more bumpy. So whoever they paid to repave the surface of Sao Paulo, you should probably get your money back because that didn't work. But it was an absolutely insane qualifying, set up the stage incredibly well for Sunday. And what a race it was. Let's move on to our next question of who will take home P6 in the midfield. because Alpine is in P6 now. What the heck happened? None of us expected two Alpines on the podium. We complained at the beginning of the year that their car was an absolute boat. Maybe that finally paid off for them this weekend in the rain. But they are now P6 ahead of Haas and RB. They're all within 5 points of each other. We thought Haas was a shoe-in for P6. They had a horrible weekend this weekend. RB had maybe their best weekend of the year. So, in your opinion, who's the favorite to take home P6 in the midfield right now?
Right now, I still have to put my money on Haas. I think they've been the most consistent. I think that car isn't necessarily great in the rain, and that showed this weekend. But they've really been the most consistent. I think it was also kind of unfortunate for them to have Kevin not be able to race this weekend. Kevin's been really consistent up, through this triple header and a couple races before that as well. And Ollie is a great driver, and he's going to do great things for Haas. But having him step in at the 11th hour and try
I
to
think this was the worst weekend for him to step in. Like Holly Behrman is great, but then to get to thrown into this situation, that is tough for someone's
really
third
tough,
Grand Prix.
yeah. And he did finish the race, which honestly is more than a lot of drivers can say this
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I still have to put my money on Haas. I think when I see Kevin driving right now, I think he's motivated to finish out what is likely going to be the end of his Formula One career very strong. Kevin's been in the sport for a long time, and I think he's a well-respected driver. Um, and I think he wants to maintain that and finish out strong and give back to Haas, because they have given him a lot over the years as well. So I'm going to go with Haas. That might not be the best and the most popular pick right now after what happened with Alpine this weekend and how I got the double podium. Nobody would have predicted that at the beginning of the year, or even on Friday. Nobody would have predicted that, but that is what happened. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Haas is probably still the most popular choice. Like, it's not like there's a massive gap between them and Alpine right now. It could still switch in one weekend. I think it is unfortunate that Kevin Magnussen didn't get to race because I think this triple header was the most consistent I've seen him drive since like the beginning of 2021. And so he was in top Kevin Magnussen form and then had to sit out because of an illness, which is truly unfortunate. Hope this 3 week break is good for him. He's fully recovered by the time we get to Las Vegas. I'm sure he will be. But RB had a good weekend as well. I mean, they looked competitive in the sprint. Liam Lawson almost brought home some points there. And then, obviously P3 and P5 in qualifying were on the wrong end of the pit strategy. Surprise, surprise there. B Carb got the strategy wrong. But they still scored double points. P7 and P9 is a good haul of points for them. Their car has been looking more competitive in this triple header. And as much as it pains me to say, I think putting Liam Lawson in was the right choice for them. I think he has injected some life into that team with his pace as well. As far as Alpine goes, yes, there was complete luck with that podium, but I think they're still in this fight. I mean, we saw Pierre Gasly have pace in USA and it get undone by a pit stop, but we
yeah,
saw him
but
score in Mexico, and then we saw him score in the dry in the sprint. He got P7 in the sprint, and there was no luck involved in that. He qualified well and then performed well in the race in the dry, and then obviously got the double podium on Sunday. So I think Alpine are truly in this. I mean, they've scored points in the last 2 weekends. They could, these upgrades could be working and they could still be in it enough to hang on to this lead they have in P6. So, we've got this constructors championship lead at the front, but this one for P6 is pretty interesting as well, and I'm excited to see how it turns out.
yeah, me too. I think you're absolutely right. Alpine's been pretty consistent recently. I think Pierre has been really consistent recently. Esteban had a great weekend, or great Sunday, at least, and obviously finished P2 in the race. So that's fantastic points for him. But I think Pierre has been driving really, really well recently, and that's kind of brought Alpine back into this. And unfortunately, with the double podium, really locked Williams into P9 there in the constructor standings.
Gotta feel bad for Williams, ahead of Alpine all year, kind of on this upward trajectory still, and then boom, nothing you can do, relegated to P9, and that's just the way it goes.
Relegated P9, three pretty big crashes this weekend. A lot of work to be done for their mechanics. I mean, man, I would love to see the live view of the mechanics after they just watching crash after crash. it's unfortunate. You feel bad for Williams because I truly do like Alex Albon. I like Franco Colapinto. I think he's a nice kid, or seems like he is at least. And James Vowles is, I think, a good leader. So hopefully next year get Williams in P8 in the Constructors Championship.
I'm sure they'll be fine. Williams is on the right path. I fully trust in James Vowles, but yeah, it is sad for them. They made the right move. They got Franco in the car, and things have been looking up, looking like they had secured that P8, and then nothing they can do. Just a great weekend for Alpine. Who was your top step driver of the weekend this time out in Brazil?
My top step driver of the weekend has got to be Max Verstappen. It's nobody else. Like I said, just literally the best drive I've ever seen any person in motorsport perform. And he was just so confident, just on a different level, truly showed um, why, you know, he is deserving of the world championship. It's his 8th win this season. That's a lot. I know that doesn't sound like a lot after he had what, 19 or 18,
Yeah,
19 last year,
19 last year.
19 last year and 15 the year before. It doesn't seem like a lot. That's not the same, not the same Max Verstappen that we've been seeing the past couple years. But no, Max is still on that same level. It's like his, I think, 62nd win in Formula One. There's not a lot of people ahead of him on that list. So, yeah, I think Max showed why he deserves to be world champion.
Yeah, just absolutely insane weekend for Max Verstappen. And just hearing the emotion on the team radio, like we haven't heard that from Max Verstappen in a long time. I mean, last year he'd win a race and it'd be like, "Yep, good job, thanks team, great race." And then he was like screaming again this weekend. So that was good to see. Always love to see an energized and motivated Max Verstappen. I've gone for a team because it has to be Alpine. I mean, double podium. Who would have thought that? Whomst amongst us would have thought that Alpine would have gotten a double podium this weekend? I mean, that is just insane. And it wasn't even all luck. I mean, Esteban Ocon qualified there. Great performance from Pierre Gasly to come from P13 up to P3. They got the strategies right, but they got in that position and they held it. They didn't go off. Just great weekend from them. And of course, Pierre Gasly, 2 points in the sprint. So 2 more points to add on the Constructors Championship. Great weekend from Alpine, and I'm gonna combine them as a team for my top step team of the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I mean, even towards the end of the race, Pierre was doing some great defending to hang on to that podium position. So there's no way that you could say that it was all luck for Alpine. They both had great drives. Esteban was leading the race for a period of time, and there was a moment in my head where I was like, is this going to be another Hungary 2021
I was like,
situation?
no chance Esteban Ocon is about to win his second race right now. It ended up not to be, but I wouldn't have been upset about it. I wouldn't have been upset
Yeah,
about
I
it.
wouldn't have either. That would have been an amazing result for him. So,
Yeah, great weekend for Alpine. It is time to recap our predictions. I am currently winning 20 to 18. Let's see how it went this past weekend for us. Podium pusher of the weekend, maybe my best prediction of all time because I pulled this one out of nowhere. Pierre Gasly, give me that point. Get in there, baby. Come on.
yeah, that was a fantastic pick. Unfortunately for me, I picked Fernando Alonso, and he didn't have a great weekend. I mean, had he finished in the points, maybe top six, top seven, I could argue it, but it was not a great Sunday race for him. So no point for me.
Hey, at least it was better than his teammate Lance Stroll, who
Uh,
we haven't spoken about. I just a little segment on the guy binning it on the formation lap and then purposefully driving through the gravel and beaching himself for no reason before the race even started. What?
I have no words. I have no words for Lance Stroll.
Dang it,
Um,
dude. Why does he still have a seat?
I don't know. I have no idea. Um, maybe he'll be driving for Red Bull next year or something because he did about as good a job as Sergio Perez did. Anyway, I didn't say that.
Oh
Nobody.
gosh.
But
Speaking of Sergio Perez, he was my back marker of the weekend, and I'm claiming that point as well. All right, double Q2 elimination, Womp womp. You scored 1 point in the sprint. You scored no points in the main race. He absolutely binned it on the first lap, dropped himself right down the field. He technically finished behind more drivers than started in front of him because the two spots were vacated by Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. And so he was elevated those two spots. And then like seven drivers DNF'd, and he still finished behind more cars and started in front of him. What the Frank was that weekend from Sergio Perez? It kind of got covered up because everyone else had more crazy weekends, but it was another horrible weekend from Sergio Perez. Red Bull has fully gifted this Constructors' Championship to McLaren or Ferrari, and I'm claiming him as my backmarker of the weekend.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You have no argument for me on that one. I mean, even after the race, Christian Horner dubbed Sergio Perez's spin on lap one annoying. That's not good. Christian Horner
Gosh.
calling you annoying,
Oh.
that's not good. In response to that, Sergio Perez said he is not worried about his seat and he will be driving for Red Bull in 2025. So what else could you expect?
He probably
Uh,
said they just didn't run the right program and he had some problems with the tires and just we'll get him next weekend.
yeah, that I think about summed up Sergio's interview. So another classic Sergio Perez race weekend. But yeah, great pick. My back marker of the weekend, I've gone with Yuki Tsunoda, and that is definitely incorrect. Yuki had a great weekend. Picked up points in the Grand Prix, qualified P3. It was a fantastic lap from him in Q3 in qualifying, and clearly the RB had pace around Brazil. And like I said earlier, Yuki drove in P3 for a decent chunk of the race at the beginning. He did get past pretty quickly, but he drove like I think about 10 laps or so in P3. Um,
I think it was
but
more like 20. He really was in front of Esteban until like the heavy rain started coming down again. So good race
yeah,
from
sure,
Yuki.
yeah. Great race from Yuki. Good points when RB needed it. So good weekend for him means bad weekend for me. So
Hey, that's all right. This is when it starts to look a little worse for me. Sprint pole prediction, I said Lando Norris, which was incorrect.
I said Charles Leclerc, which was also incorrect. We
Yep.
were both close.
Yeah. Well, kind of. Lando Norris did win the sprint, and that's what I predicted. So 1 point for me.
And I also predicted Lando Norris to win the sprint. So another point for me.
Grand Prix pole, I said Charles Leclerc, which was incorrect.
And I said Carlos Sainz, which was also pretty incorrect.
And then for our podium, I put Oscar Piastri in P3, which was incorrect.
And I said Charles Leclerc in P3, which is incorrect.
I said Charles Leclerc P2, incorrect.
I said Lando Norris P2, which is incorrect.
P1, I said Lando Norris, which was incorrect.
And in P1, I said Carlos Sainz, which was also incorrect.
We should have just written off that whole section. I'm sorry for the 45 seconds we just wasted of our listeners' time because no one in the world predicted the podium that happened this weekend. My push and predictions, I said that at least one RB driver would make it into Q3 this weekend, and they put it P3 and P5. So how about that point? And then I also said that Lewis Hamilton would outperform George Russell over the course of the weekend, which was maybe the worst prediction I've ever made in my life because Lewis Hamilton like had his worst weekend in Formula One. It was terrible. So that's incorrect. Well, maybe he outperformed him in like a 1990 McLaren. He was the better Mercedes driver in the 1990. I'm just kidding. I can't get a point for it. So that's my push and predictions.
Yeah, not a great weekend for Lewis. But for my push and predictions, I had 4 or more DNFs across both the sprint and the main Grand Prix. We definitely covered that one. And then Ferrari scoring the most points over the course of the weekend. That obviously did not happen. I think that if it was dry, normal conditions, I would have had a decent shot at both of those. I think you probably would have had a decent shot at Lewis Hamilton outperforming George Russell. But uh, it was a different story. So,
Uh,
all
that
right.
Mercedes just isn't gelling with Lewis. I think he's ready to head out the door for Ferrari. I think we're going to see a revived Lewis Hamilton next year. The fans at PPK underscore 96 underscore says the top four will be Max, Lando, and the two Ferraris. That is incorrect. And at Mason underscore pilot 126 says Lando Norris will be back on the podium, which didn't happen in the race, but I'm like 99% sure that we said it could happen in the sprint and we'd count it too.
I
So
think
I'm
we
going to
did. Good.
say Mason can have the point.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I'm pretty sure we definitely specifically qualified that in the last pack podcast. So
Yeah, perfect. Good job, Mason. You got that one right, which means I am currently leading 24 to 20. 3 rounds left. We will see. It's so close, not out of reach.
good.
I did expand my lead to 4 points, feeling great about it. But we have got 3 rounds left to settle this thing. Brandon, before we get out of here, what are your parting podium thoughts?
Man, what a weekend. I'm excited for this next triple header to finish out the season. Triple headers are a lot of fun, and we've got 3 awesome tracks. Um, Las Vegas, I'm excited for the second edition of that. Um, it's kind of a mixed bag of a weekend last year, so I'm excited to see what Formula One brings this year in Las Vegas. Hopefully some really cool liveries. Unfortunately, no special Red Bull livery, which
Maybe
was
they've changed their mind now that you got the 62 points. They're like, I'll run it back, paint the car.
yeah. Hopefully so. Hopefully so. Stranger things have happened in Formula One. Um, but yeah, I'm excited for Vegas, and you have Qatar and Abu Dhabi, which are always fun to watch as well. So we'll see what happens. But constructors battle coming down to the wire, which we haven't had in a long time. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm pumped that Qatar is later in the year this year. Maybe we don't have as much driver health concerns and they don't have to pit every 19 laps because the tires can't hold up. So hopefully we'll see an even better Qatar Grand Prix. And we had a great race there last year, so it can only go up from there. But that is all we have got for this episode of the Podium Pushers podcast. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Before you go, subscribe, follow, give us a like, leave a comment, whatever you are watching or listening on, you know what to do. So just go ahead and do it. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Have a great day. We'll see you in the next one.
See ya.